Hi, glad you can join me for another Todd Talk where we take teaching theory and turn it into teaching practice. What we're going to be talking about today is how do you make connections in a virtual classroom? This can be a real challenge because there's you on your computer and your students on their computer, and you may be many, many miles apart. Uh, right now, I'm teaching students from China, so they are thousands and thousands of miles away from me. So I have to figure out ways to make connections with them through my virtual platform. And so, what this Todd Talk is going to talk about is what are 8 things you might consider doing to better make connections with your students. The first one is pretty easy, which is as much as possible, show them your world. So what I mean by this is, as you can see in the background of my video right here, is you can see some of my personality here. You have artwork over here. You have a poster that I think is pretty funny. You can see that I like books over here. I have a quote in the back. And so students are getting a glimpse into my world. And so as much as possible, try it, whether you're at home or whether you're in your classroom, try as much as possible to show them who you are and what makes you you. Now, keep in mind, you do want to make sure you're wearing pants. I know in the COVID age that we don't necessarily put those on every day, but you don't want to show them too much. But we definitely want to make sure that you are kind of showing your personality. So whether it's having a sports team pennant behind you that you root for, or anything of that nature, but your students want to know about you, just like you want to know about them. And there's that debate on whether students should have to turn their camera on or not, because some students may be afraid or embarrassed of what their house looks like. But I like to see faces, so as much as possible, I try to have students have their cameras on when we're having class, and there are appropriate times where they can turn them off. But I do want to see faces. It helps me to make connections. It helps me to see their world as well as seeing mine. The second strategy that you might use is using morning meetings. So morning meetings are at the beginning of the school day, however you have set that up in your virtual setting. You just have a meeting where you pose a really interesting question. So here's an example of different questions you might ask at your morning meetings. Notice that none of these are curricular in base. The idea of a morning meeting is just getting to know your students and make those connections with them. So you might ask questions like, if you could have any superpower, what would you choose? And then students can share what they would want to do, whether it be invisibility or super strength or super speed. It will indicate something about them, what you're going to learn from them. If you had to eat one food the rest of your life, what would it be? And so students could make a compelling argument for why they want pizza, or why they want deluxe grams, or why they want Doritos. And so again, you're going to get to learn a bit about them through these morning meetings. So you can see these questions here, and what they're designed to do is not to teach students. They're designed to get information and to make connections with students and learn something about them. Questions like, if someone has given you $1 million, what would you do with it? You're going to see, what kind of kid you're working with their answer in a lot of cases. So these morning meetings, you're not asking all these questions at one meeting. You're asking one question a meeting, but you have these morning meetings so that you can make that kind of check in with students, just have a casual conversation about something and be learning something about them while making a connection. So a third strategy that you can use to make connections with your students is effective feedback. So John Hattie, in his seminal study of teaching practices across the disciplines, he looked at what were the most effective teaching practices. And what he found was that effective feedback was one of the top ones. And it's not just feedback for feedback's sake. So if you tell a student great work or nice job, that may boost their confidence, but that is not going to really tell them what they did well, that they can continue to do well, or what they might improve upon. So your feedback needs to be as specific as possible, but it also needs to show them that you are making a connection with their work and what they're doing. So you see this example here. So I will give students a rubric, and then I'll evaluate them and I'll circle the different parts. But you will also notice that for each circle that I put on there, that I have a written aspect as well. And this just clarifies what I saw specifically that led me to circle what I circled. And so this specific feedback is going to give them a lot of kind of what a lot of stuff to work with so they can improve or they can continue to do things that they do well. What I try to do as much as possible, even in a virtual setting, is also talk about these rubrics. You know, having a verbal feedback session as well. So what I'll do is, if I'm using Zoom, is I will put kids in chat rooms and kind of let them do some independent work that they can do. And then I invite kids to the main meeting room. And in that main meeting room, then we'll have a conversation about what I circled and why I circled it and what they thought. And this, again, is making a connection with them. So how did they see their project as compared to how you saw their project? Or how did they see their work and the quality of that work as compared to how you saw it? This is going to allow you to make a connection as well. So as much as possible, when you're grading things, or when you're assessing things or evaluating things, try to give them effective written feedback and have conversations with them about it, rather than just handing it back, because sometimes kids will not look at it when you hand it back. And so that effective feedback then goes by the wayside. And so having those conversations kind of forces students to look at that feedback and what they can do better for next time. A fourth strategy to consider is that if you are going to provide effective feedback, you need to give students a platform to be able to provide you effective feedback as well. And this feedback usually comes in the form of reflection. And this could be done as a Google Doc. So you can just have students, you could just give them a prompt and have them write in the Google Doc. And then you can have a classroom discussion about that, or not. You just leave that private. Here's a good document that has lots of really good prompts. The address for this is up here at the top. So if you want to look at this yourself, but this is one that I found that I thought did a really good job of breaking it down. So it talks about how you can have students, you can give them prompts that are just going to tap into their emotions. Like, for example, describe a time they felt the same way a story character does. So if you're reading a book, you can tap into that. Write about a time your emotions impacted your actions. So again, you're getting their feelings on this. You're not necessarily getting academic content, but you're getting, through this reflection, you're going to get a good understanding and connection of the student. It could be personal qualities that they have, like a time they showed leadership and supported a peer at school, or write about a time and achievement that made them feel proud. And then again, you're going to learn about them there. It can be related to academic goals, like what are their overall academic goals and what strategies are they going to use to get there. One thing that I like to do with reflections is ask the question at the end of a unit is, what did you learn from this? And how did you feel about your own work during this process? And then you're getting a good understanding of where they are. So here's other prompts on feelings and perspective of others, recognizing individual group similarities and differences, communication and social skills. So these are a slew of really good questions, the ethical questions, like what kinds of things do you think about when making a decision? So it's really getting into kind of deep reflection there. Decision-making skills, such as describe a time you used the decision-making process we learned in class, or contribute to the well-being of one's school and community. So this is, what are some ways that you have helped others in our virtual classroom? So these are prompts, reflections. Again, they can be written in a Google Doc. They could be filmed if a student is not a strong writer or prefer to verbalize it. They could do it in a Flipgrid video. But this gives students an outlet to let you know about how they feel. And these feelings then are going to form connections. So you're going to get a good understanding of your students and where they're at, which will allow you to better understand them. In addition to you making connections with your students and them making connections with you, you want students to have the opportunity to make connections with each other. So one thing that can be easily overlooked in a virtual setting is the idea of group work or collaboration. It can be done in a virtual setting, and it should be done in a virtual setting, as it should be done in all settings, because this allows them to work with others, to develop leadership skills and coping skills when it comes to working with others and figuring out what their strengths are and things of that nature. So you can, the fifth strategy is to have students do collaboration in a virtual setting. So what this might look like is you might have students that open up a Google Doc or a Google Slide and share it with the others, and then they can work on it simultaneously. So one person's adding things, they're talking about things, in the chat, they can, but they are able to collaborate with one another. I had students when I was teaching a class, an online class, they just traded each other's phone numbers, and they would call each other, and they would um, be able to have conversations about how they were going to work together. But there are ways for students to work together. You just have to give them the opportunity and give them the platform, and allow them and give them the skills to do that. So just throwing them into groups is not necessarily the answer. You, as a class, you might want to talk about what are some skills that you can bring to a group setting. What are some things that are some norms that you want your class wants to have, so that people are aware of those and are adhering to those. So you don't just want to put them in groups, you want to train them to work in groups and then give them a platform to do so. A sixth strategy that you might want to consider is having open office hours. Because you are not in front of your students all the time during the school day, you might give them work where they can go work independently, or an activity that they can do. But you still want to make yourself available for students to be able to have conversations with you, to ask questions, and so on and so forth. So what you can do is you can set regular office hours. So it could be these 3 days a week. From this time to this time. I'll be on the Google Meet. Please come if you like. So this is what this might look like on your Google Classroom, if that is the LMS that you happen to be using. So you can see here, I have office hours every Wednesday from 2 to 3 o'clock. Students just go to the Meet link at the top of the page, and they click on that, and I'll be there. I'll make sure I've made myself available and that I'm present. And then I give them some suggestions for what this is a space for, whether it's talking about how things are going at school, questions they might have, guidance on something they're working on, something that's bothering them, or if they just want to chat. Maybe they're bored and they just want to talk about something or share something that they thought was really cool. So this is just about providing space for students, and to not always just be about business, but to be about just being available for them to connect with you, and to ask questions, because they might not have someone in their lives that is able to provide the feedback that you're going to be able to provide, or the insight that you're going to be able to provide. So you just want to make yourself available for students. A seventh strategy that you need to consider is the idea of making sure that your virtual classroom is authentic. So what I mean by authentic is, in a virtual setting, it can be difficult for things to feel authentic, because students are staring at their computer screen, they're turning things in on the computer, they're receiving information back from the computer. And so this is kind of their only portal to learning. And so trying to get beyond that would be a good thing. And ways you can do that is to have authentic learning activities, to have authentic assessments, to have authentic audiences. So what I mean by this is, so let's say you want students to learn how to write a persuasive essay. Well, rather than just writing a persuasive essay and turning it into you and getting feedback and getting it back, and that's the end of that. What if you had them write a persuasive essay to a company that they're unhappy with the product of, or sending something out to a senator on a law they want to change? So try to make the activity authentic. Same thing that goes with assessments. When students are doing assessments, don't just have them turn it in virtually. They can give presentations, they can make websites, they can do things that actually are authentic for them, for what they're working on. And so what this does then is it shows them that the work they're doing is valuable and valued and can be used in the real world. And this is really important. When it comes to an authentic audience, when you're going to have students, maybe you're having students give a presentation, or maybe you invite audience members to come to the Zoom or to your Google Classroom or whatever, or your Google Meet, or whatever it is that you're using as your LMS or your platform to have these conversations. You invite them to those, and you make sure that the students know that there's going to be an authentic audience present. So when I had students doing speeches this summer, I invited their parents on the final 2 classes to come in and actually join the Zoom and watch their student give their speech. And so this provided an authentic audience. But you could find experts, you could find all sorts of people that they don't even have to travel. They just have to get on the Zoom. So you get people from halfway across the globe, depending upon their time zone. So keep in mind that whenever you are trying to design activities and assessments and things of that nature for your virtual classroom, is try to consider how you can make it authentic. And as a result, make it meaningful for students. so that they see the importance and value of what it is that they're doing. The eighth and final strategy that I'm going to talk about today is what's called the 2 times 10 theory. The 2 times 10 theory is fairly simple. You have those kids that you're not making connections to. Either they're not coming to offerings that you have, they don't actively participate in class, or they're often absent because it's easy to miss in a virtual setting. They turn their cameras off all the time when you ask them to have them on. And so the 2 by 10 theory is basically, it was pioneered by a Canadian principal by the name of Myron Dweck. And he felt that teachers could spend 2 minutes a day for 10 days trying to connect with challenging students. So let's say you have a student that's not showing up. Send an email to them when you start out, or give them a call, or let them know that you're thinking of them. But try to make that connection with those students, because one reason why they might not be coming is they don't feel that connection. They may have lost that connection a long time at school, long time ago. And so it's up to you to try to reestablish this connection. And the best way you can do that is just show that you care. If they see that you care about what they're doing, they're more than likely to come back and be part of that classroom and be part of that community that you're establishing in the virtual platform. So take those handful of students, hopefully, that are not participating or are not actively involved or are not connecting, and make a concerted effort to reach out to them, to reach out to their parents, to reach out to whoever is necessary in order to engage them in the learning and show them that what they have to offer is valued and that you care about what they have to offer to the classroom.